Welcome to Managing Sexuality Intelligently. My name is Jason, and I'm here with the one and only Stephen Ng, marriage and family therapist.
There could be more than one of us, and it's very strongly adjacent to Stephen King. So, although I'm not nearly as wealthy, but
well, thank you for showing up once again for another episode.
Yeah, I really like being able to talk freely about sexuality this way, and particularly, escaping that seventh grade version of the sexual conversation, like you might hear on Howard Stern or something like that. And also to escape the other extreme, which would be talking about it like we're in a Baptist church or something.
Cool. Yeah, there's a whole different place to talk about it in a much more casual, conversational way. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about the Madonna-Whore Complex, also known as the Madonna Mistress Complex, according to Wikipedia. Wikipedia defines this as the inability to maintain sexual arousal within a committed, loving relationship. Sigmund Freud first identified this complex under the rubric of psychic impotence. It is a psychological complex said to develop in men who see women as either saintly Madonnas or debased prostitutes. Men with this behavioral complex desire a sexual partner who has been degraded while they cannot desire the respected partner. To sum all this up, Freud wrote, "Where such men love, they have no desire, and where they desire, they cannot love." So with all that said, I'd like to open the conversation with Steve to discuss this complex and his experiences with it. And I'd probably like to start with just asking, when is the first time you can remember encountering this, if you could?
Wow, that's an easy question. Sure, I can't. No, I really can't recall the very first time, but I can tell you this. And I think this is even maybe more important than my first time encountering this, and that would be how pervasive it is even among the non-religious. So surprisingly, the Madonna obviously is a very, except for Madonna the singer, it's a very religious reference to the Sacred Mother. And then the whore is, of course, that social stigmatizing term we use for sex workers who maybe aren't even sex workers anymore. They're just loose women who like to have sex with a lot of partners. And it's actually rather shocking to see how common this is. So I can't remember the first time because I'm old, but I've seen an awful lot of these cases. And it comes up in marriage counseling, and it comes up in sex offender treatment all the time.
And it's so how common percentage-wise? Is there something that you could give? Like, is this one of the main things couples struggle with in relationships?
I think it's one of the things and I'm not trying to exaggerate when I say this. I'm not trying to create some kind of controversy where there is none, but honestly, it's almost universal. And even among those who get past it, it's sort of at least, they're past the obvious specific reference to it, or they don't recognize within themselves, even when they're very bright and self-aware, they don't see that they are doing it. It's extremely common. And there's an underlying reason for that. Foundationally in our belief systems, we typically, whether we're religious or not, we tend to think of religion and spirituality belonging to one domain and sexuality belonging to another, such that the two compartments in our brain that hold each of these domains separately, they don't communicate. There's no crosstalk between them. So if for people who really like and enjoy and give themselves the freedom to enjoy sexual encounters, they often don't enjoy or see the spiritual component of what it is they're doing, and vice versa. For those who enjoy a more spiritually oriented lifestyle, they often don't see how their sexuality can be a very important part of that spirituality. And I suppose part of the origin of that is because the two have sort of competed over the millennia that we've had our human race. They've competed for market share in that they each command a level of mystery and awe and aesthetic beauty that is transcendent, truly, transcendent. And for I don't think so much the problem is on the side of sexuality as I think it is the jealousy of a jealous God who is resistant to sharing any of the limelight with any of his creation. So you see a lot of people sort of denigrating that whole side of human sexuality as if it's, well, in years gone by, the dirty part of being a human being, or there's something profane about enjoying sex, or at least highly suspect when we're talking about human sexuality and enjoying it too much. And you see this come up, and it manifests in a lot of different ways. And I'm aware I talk a lot, so I tend to talk kind of quickly. So if you want to interrupt me at any point, please feel free. Okay. But I get on a roll, and I'm so excited to talk about this stuff because it's such a important part of our marriages. It's a part of our family lives. It's a part of our really, I think, of a legacy to our humanity that is really meant to be universal. So, for example, the client he's the American guy who's married, and he's trying to be a really good husband and a good lover, and he makes every attempt or even insists on his wife having an orgasm before he has an orgasm. And that insistence may have its origin in a concern for being fair and equality-minded. It may even be promoted or prompted by a certain level of love and regard for his wife. But when it becomes a controlled issue, and it has in many marriages where, no, I'm not going to have sex until you have an orgasm. And if you don't have an orgasm, then I get to walk away disappointed and maybe even sullenly resentful because your sexual appetite isn't synchronized with my sexual appetite, which when you think about that, that's a rather ridiculous idea that it would be.
Yeah.
That'd be like saying we should both be hungry at exactly the same time and for the same exact meal, the same number of calories. And there are many partners who would be glad to take care of their partner, but who don't require payment in the form of an orgasm before the other partner can feel free. But that payment business, I'll swap you orgasm for orgasm, where she must have an orgasm first before he feels free. That's a little bit of the whore, isn't it? I mean, there's some sort of a performative act I have to accomplish before I'm worthy of receiving this, and it could have been in the form of money or in the form of an orgasm, but it's rather like payment, and the proof of that is, and it's regardless of what the partner is actually saying to him. When his partner is saying to him, "No, I'm totally fine with taking care of you, and have at it, big boy. Howdy, sailor. Welcome aboard." But sex can't happen for a lot of men until that other part takes place. And then just at the opposite extreme are those men who have no regard whatsoever, as if it is her obligation or duty to take care of him sexually, and he has zero regard for her sexual gratification. But in either case, if you think about it, it's incredibly sexist because she's never an equal. It doesn't matter what she says in regards to, no, go ahead, I want you to enjoy. I don't feel like having an orgasm today. I had 3 yesterday in the shower. I don't need to have another one today. And he can't bear to hear that because, it just doesn't comport with his own notions of masculinity and of what's right and what's wrong. And at the other extreme, it doesn't matter what she wants. And so sex, as long as I deserve it, he has a sense of entitlement. He either paid for it or somehow he's worked hard for it in some way that justifies his taking rather than they sharing who they are with one another in a sexual way. So the Madonna-Whore Complex comes complete with this whole entourage of negative cascading events that really sabotage any sense of connection and real intimacy. And it's because of that failure to integrate sexuality and spirituality. On the other hand, and this is what makes talking about sexuality so complicated with some within some contexts. If a man and a wife or any other gendered couple step into a bedroom and they're having sex and they enjoy talking dirty to one another, does that mean now that they're not spiritual, they're not walking with God? Does it mean they're not spiritually minded? Does it mean something anti-spiritual? Well, not if you think about the bedroom as God's playground for grown-ups. And so we could be enjoying some role playing or pretending like we're far more aggressive or far more submissive than we normally are. But it's in the context of this world of make-believe. Just like when we were 6 or 7 years old, we might have played cowboys and Indians or cops and robbers or army and thrown dirt clods at each other or shot each other with invisible guns and invisible bullets. You're dead. No, I'm not. You missed me. That kind of thing. And if little children can understand the world of make-believe, they know they didn't, and they know they didn't kill anybody when they shot them with the invisible gun.
Yeah.
What happened to us adults that we have forgotten how to distinguish between make-believe and having fun and playing and the real world? So I think for a lot of us, that's that failure to allow the two parts of our brain to speak and have an enlightened conversation about sexuality and spirituality, because I think there's a whole lot there. The individual who, and it couldn't be the male or the female or both within a relationship, who think about sexuality in terms of the Madonna-Whore Complex. See, this construct of the Madonna-Whore also keeps women, at least some women, from relaxing and just enjoying their sexuality and their sensuality within the context of sexuality, because, well, only bad girls do that. And they are not bad, nor do they want to be bad. So with their husbands, perhaps they have quite a constrained sort of sexuality. And then, as we all know, the irresistible appeal of the bad boy, hopefully wearing a leather jacket and jeans with holes in them. The bad boy, they don't care about, because his esteem is not what they're looking for. They don't care about his esteem, because they in turn don't respect him. They may respect his style or his power, the physicality of it all, but they're not really respecting him in terms of building a life or developing a family that they feel good about.
Yeah. So what happens with men and women?
It infects everybody.
But I don't like, so say like I'm a couple and I'm there with my wife and I was like, I'm not able to have sex with my wife, or I don't want to have sex, or what is,
or you'd feel uncomfortable doing that thing she wants you to do involving the parachute and the weird furry outfit.
So she proposes that to me, and then I'm like, I can't do this because I see her, I love her and see her in a loving way, and I don't see her in the more like scandalous way, like.
Well, I'm really glad you put it that way, because I think that's what a lot of people would say, but I think that's exactly wrong. A lot of people would say, because I love her. But if I love someone, but I don't love who they are in reality, then I really don't love them. So I can say I love them. No, I love you too much to do that, dear. But if she's encouraging and prompting the sort of play that we were just talking about, really, am I really loving her as an equal? I really don't think so. And I think it's the same way with women who talk to their men that way.
Yeah. So what's going on in their brains, or why can't a guy do that thing? Or what have you discovered? Like, why is this complex existing? Or is it that whole thing with the religion and spirituality and the confusion? Like, is that the main culprit of it, you suspect?
Well, I suppose a lot of times I do come across as anti-religious, and to some extent I am, just on a personal basis. But I think it's also true that religion gets beat up a lot, when actually it's just us. It's not necessarily religion. It's just the individuals with their sexual hangups, and then they're borrowing beliefs from the nearest adjacent religion, just to slap together some justification for their saying no. So I love you too much to do that, I would never say ejaculate anywhere other than the preordained orifice that God is approved of. Um, for that guy, even though she's saying, no, I'm okay with that. No, that would be fun. No, that would be exciting. Or even just taking the risk and doing it, when there's no definite no. I think that it seems to me that there's a tremendous lack of intimacy because there's so much fear and it doesn't feel safe. And in the Tao, verse 17 of Jonathan Starr's translation of the Tao, how can I trust anyone when I cannot trust myself? And if I don't trust myself to be able to discern that I'm getting a green light from my partner, or at least discern that, well, it would be okay to try this. I mean, it's not going to hurt anybody. Instead of insight, instead of true spirituality and the principles that would help us grow spiritual, we end up having a lot of rules, and we replace spirituality with rules. And I know Christ said, what was it? That the letter of the law bringeth death, and the spirit bringeth life. So what would the letter of the law say? Well, I shouldn't do this, or I can't do that, or no, that's highly suspect, and I'm sure that the Holy Spirit wouldn't want me to do that. And Muslims have their version of that, and Orthodox Jews have their version of that, and even my agnostic atheist clients have their own secular way of saying the same things. And that's why I don't think it's about religion as much as it is about us. And why is that? How did we get there where we're so messed up? I think it's because we've had so few conversations like you and I are having right now, where it's safe enough to talk about sexuality. I think in general, most people don't even know how to have a safe conversation about sexuality because it's not so much a matter of vocabulary and not knowing the difference between a vagina and a vulva as it is not knowing how to construct the sentences that would provide for meaningful communication. Why? Well, why do I have that deficit? Because I've never heard anybody else talk about it. And if we don't have those conversations, how can we ever reveal ourselves to our partners or get our partners to reveal themselves to us? So,
but if I'm in a relationship and my girlfriend or wife is like, I want this to happen with this parachute, she gives me a very specific thing to do, and then I'm like, no, I can't do that, or I don't. That's coming from like a place of control or some.
No, when I said rules, which is I think what is applying here, it's even the rules of manhood. That I wouldn't be a man if I did that. I had one client who years ago, he said he was talking about his girlfriend coming over after shopping, and she had brought all the, it was like a scene out of a movie where she shows up with all these bags from department stores and boxes within the bags and that sort of thing. And he was admiring all the outfits she had bought. And then she took out one particularly hot number. It was a red dress. And he said, wow, that is really hot. She said, well, that's for you.
And he's like, no, put it away.
Well, and it was one of those moments where he was on the edge of the razor where it could have gone either way. And he decided he was going to take the risk. And then he confided, and it was the best sex of my life. Well, and what made it the best sex of his life? Probably not mere intercourse, because he'd had an intercourse before and that was good. So we can eliminate that variable. I'm sure it wasn't because she was, spectacularly more nimble afoot or more flexible like a Gumby, when they had sex. But I think it was because he took a risk and was vulnerable and was willing to play. I think
so. It's that but what is the vulnerability of a woman bringing, oh, I got this red outfit for you? It's like
a red dress for her man. Well, the vulnerability was on his part, being willing to play along.
But he did, just even the idea of playing along in like a role play was like terrifying to him, or just difficult.
Well, as it would be for most men, if you brought out a one size fits all red dress and asked an audience of men, how many of you would be willing to try this on? for your partners, I don't think you'd see a whole lot of.
Oh, she wanted him to wear it?
Yep.
Oh, okay. No, I thought she would just brought it for herself. So,
No, no,
oh,
she said, "This is for
this is
you."
for you. Okay. Okay.
And he did put it on, and it was like that cover. Was it Rolling Stone that had the
All
cover of
right.
Dennis Rodman in the wedding dress?
Yeah.
It was kind of like
That's
that.
probably,
Yeah, or
okay.
I think, uh, gosh, what was her name? Or what was his name? The blonde actor who married Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt. I think he did a similar kind of thing in a dress. He was posed for a magazine cover in a dress. You know, you have to be really confident in our era to be talking about stuff like this, or much less doing it, because there's so many rules. We've talked for years, decades even, about big boys don't cry, and you got to cowboy up, and it's time to be tough, and all of that. And that is not congruent with a man wearing a red dress.
Yeah.
Much less a sexy one.
Mm-hmm.
So for him, it was very vulnerable on his part, but it was also very vulnerable on her part to simply say, I would like to do this with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think really that's where a lot of couples could start. I mean, in terms of the takeaway from a conversation like this, just to be sitting at a breakfast table where sex isn't even on the agenda for the morning, or even just as we're going out the door to go to work or to go to some sort of social gathering. You know, sometime I'd really like to see what you look like in a really great looking dress, she would say to her husband. Or he might say to her, sometime, you know, I would really like to ejaculate over this part of your body I've never ejaculated over. And, you know, for the other persons, their eyes are going to get big. And I remember one of my clients years ago who said that when her grandmother found out about what oral sex was, because even as an adult woman, she had never heard of that. She said any man who would want a woman to do that should be in an insane asylum. And she wasn't joking. Yeah. She was really angry and very defended. And that's the kind of stigma we all face. If in the remedy, I think, isn't just jumping into the deep end of the swimming pool, but maybe in terms of what would be actionable, going a little slower and a little more incremental, and just see where the line gets drawn. So I'm going to share something that might be very controversial to the people listening, but I think this is a legitimate place to employ a technique that the media ascribes to sex offenders, and that is grooming. Grooming is getting the victim ready for the offense by either blackmail or systematically desensitizing the victim, or even threatening the victim. There's all kinds of ways we get victims ready, but we're not talking about a sex crime. We're talking about sexual intimacy in the context of a consensual adult relationship. So if I say, no, I really want to do that thing with the parachute and the furry outfit, and she says, you're disgusting. I can't believe you would say that. I think the smart individual doesn't cave in at that point. If you're sincere about building up more intimacy and having a more playful experience, whether it's him with her or her with him or him with him, or any other gender combo, one with many, I think that it's really important to just hold it loosely and wait for consent.
Yeah. And
when consent, what happens is systematic desensitization, and what makes it morally acceptable is, again, it's an adult consensual relationship. So if some partner of mine had said something that I found truly unacceptable under any circumstances, no matter what, no matter when, I get to leave that relationship.
Yeah.
I get to get up and walk out. I get to terminate the relationship. But if it's something that's merely controversial or merely uncomfortable sounding, but over the next 10 exposures to that fantasy, I find myself laughing, and I'm still saying, no, I'm not ever doing that. I don't care what you, I don't care how long you want that or how long you beg. I'm not doing that. But I'm still there. So I'm fair game, I think, as an adult. And there may be a fine line between systematically desensitizing my partner versus nagging my partner, because this isn't nagging what we're talking about. Nagging is closely associated with begging, right? So whining and begging and nagging, that's not acceptable. That's just not acceptable because it's abuse. But I think getting your partner to the point where he or she is laughing and saying, no, I don't even like that whole furry thing, and I don't see why you like it. That is crazy. And I don't want to do that. Okay. And they're laughing. Obviously to me, that's not abuse.
Yeah.
So, and if it were, I mean, if somebody felt so strongly about it that they, teared up or they were grossly offended, then probably I'm with the wrong partner. I mean, if my desire is to expand the dimensions of our playground and have some fun, because that's what we're talking about, right? It's not so much getting me to do back bends on a trampoline while I'm bouncing up and down.
Yeah.
It's really about having fun. And so that's the rule. If it's not fun, then it's probably not any good.
Yeah. So do you feel like then this whole complex is rooted in the idea that people aren't able to talk to one another and treat each other as equals?
Yes. I hope I also got across, and it also is a personal struggle within, because I'm not allowing the spiritual part of my brain to have a conversation with the sexual part of my brain. Because there's no reason. I mean, I suppose there are forms of spirituality that are highly restrictive and lots of thou shalt nots. But in general, I think when we're talking about consensual relations between two adults, most religions give a lot of freedom to people to behave and do and to play make-believe and to giggle and fun. And for example, even just the telling of I think this is a benign example, but some people would be very offended with this if it was just brought out. But the telling of a dirty joke in the bedroom.
There's people who are actually like offended by that, like couples.
You sound so surprised. Oh my God.
Well, I'm surprised by a lot of human behavior. I really don't understand how you could be an adult and get married and then you're in bed and then someone
and
says
you're having
sex.
Yeah, right. You've had sex multiple times, maybe hundreds of times. And then somebody tells a joke. And even, I say a dirty joke, but maybe even just a merely suggestive joke that isn't really particularly graphic or anything, but it's still maybe not the joke you would tell your mother or your mother-in-law. And there are people who get offended over that. I can't believe you disrespected me that way. I can't believe you're so carnally minded. I think we need to pray right now and ask God for forgiveness, that sort of thing.
It's so wild. I want to go back to the Freud calling this psychic impotence. So it seems to be like there's something psychically, obviously, that's causing the blockage and causing them an inability, or because physical impotence is obviously physical, but psychic, it's like there's something in their psyche that is blocked possibly, or
I think it's generally accepted that as men age, they start having more and more physical health problems, and performing sexually can be more problematic.
But don't they open up psychically more as they get older? Because it's like you don't care. It's like it seems to be that's the trajectory.
Well, it seems that they don't care, but I think part of that is, and I've talked to hundreds of men about this, is that they're not quite ready to see their sex lives die. And so they seek titillating stimulation, titillation referring to the physical, or arousal to physical stimuli. So that's one of the reasons men are motivated to start looking at porn maybe when they never looked at porn before. or going to strip clubs where they never used to do that. And many are the men I've talked to who try to use pornography as a warm up to any sort of foreplay. So they'll be looking at porn on their computer in the bedroom or in their study, then run up the stairs to jump in bed to be with their partner. And that's not really, for the listener, that's not really a good strategy for so many reasons. It's very self-defeating. But I think that's one of the thoughts. And we're all different. We all have different ways of looking at this. But I think the psychic impotence is also about it's truly sexual dysfunction, right? Dysfunction of any kind, when we're talking about mental illness, is really mostly about impairment, something that causes me distress or impairment. So I'm not able to function normally. And if I have a partner I've been having sex with for, say the first year of our marriage, and I've performed perfectly fine, but now in regard to systematic desensitization, I'm just not that excited because it's that same old experience that I'm looking at. And what's happened there is, it's kind of like a man of any age looking at a Playboy or a Penthouse magazine from yesteryear. And by the time the month is out, the nude pictures within the magazine covers are really kind of like wallpaper because he's become desensitized to it. And I think with sexuality without intimacy, you go through the same exact thing. So at first, if you're starving for sex and you're very religious and you've maintained celibacy all the way through your courtship and even your engagement, and now it's your wedding night and you go to have sex, and it's like the 40-year-old virgin having sex for the not first time but the second time. It's like great, it's amazing. But then after a year of that, if that's all you have is arousal to titillation, and you don't have that ability to safely share your lives meaningfully with one another in the bedroom, talking specifically about sexual intimacy, then you're going to become impotent over time. You're going to have to start bringing in other actors or supporting actors, like fantasizing about your old girlfriend, or fantasizing about the pornography you were looking at, or fantasizing about what you wish you were doing to somebody else or to your mate, but no talking about it. And Freud is this towering figure in the history of psychotherapy because he was the first to come up with so many ideas that we're still paying attention to even now. But Carl Gustav Jung was another one of those guys. And it was one of his many ideas I think applies here because, and I think it's truly there's a spiritual foundation to it. He said that in each person there are these archetypes. And so and you'll see book titles with king, warrior, and the prophet, and there's usually a joker, I think is the other one, or jester. And there are Jungian books about women that have the same kind of ideas, that within each one of us lie many different personas, that we are all far more complicated than just one thing. So yes, it's true, you might be an extraordinarily gifted writer, you might be even a gifted surgeon, or a wonderful politician and leader who really works for his constituents. But there are also these other aspects, that are an important part of who we all are. And one of those aspects is that of ourselves as sexual beings, or I think in Jungian terms, they probably talk about the lover. And inside of each one of us, I think inside of each woman, if you fall in love, for those heterosexual men out there, if you fall in love with a woman, she really does become all women. Like the song says, you're every woman in the world to me. You're not only who you are at first presentation, but you're also the younger woman that I first met. you're this older woman of a certain age I know today. You're the woman who is a competent, capable manager of our family, let's say, but you're also the woman next door who's been flirting with me, and you're also the sex worker who works at the brothel down the way. And that inside of every woman, inside of every man, there are all of these aspects of our being, and it doesn't degrade any of us to acknowledge those to any more than it does for a man to acknowledge that inside of even the most peaceful man there is a warrior spirit, or inside of the most humble man there is the capability of leadership. So if we really say, or if your goal, one writer wrote that all the problems of man come from not knowing his not knowing what he is, and his not knowing what he wants to become. If I want to be a true lover of my partner, to realize that, oh yeah, but she's, in addition to being a fine, upstanding member of the community and an amazing mother to my children, and she's also super creative as an artist and responsible in terms of finances. She's also this hot tamale in the bedroom, and she's also perhaps inhibited in the bedroom. And these are all aspects of who she is, and I can love all of it. I can appreciate all of who she is.
And that seems to be where people have to go to get out of this complex, or get out of this psychic impotence. They have to come to this understanding. Like you said, I really liked what you're saying, how every man and every woman is all. So is that that's what you're saying essentially, right?
Yes, I am.
And you're saying because I had a real intense meditation. It's like it's like a guy. It's like, I want to be with this woman, that woman, that woman, that woman. It's like, it goes on and on and on. But then it's like, when you get that insight, and you're like, wait, this woman is every woman, and she has the ability. But then you both have to be at that level in order to then create a life
like
that is sustainable sexually, and that could go to all those different places, and that understands. Both people have to kind of understand that about themselves.
I do want to add, though, that I think that even if we're not at exactly the same level, we can inspire one another, egg one another on, encourage one another, cheerlead each other, and continue to take those risks. So she might give him a very personal, intimate squeeze, and he looks at her because she never did that before. And now she's doing that, and she's saying, "See you later tonight." And it's a very intimate, and I would say sacred moment. Because sacred really refers to that which is apart from all other things. The alternative, as you say, is the guy who is completely dependent on titillation. And so, yeah, he's got his wife, and that's fine, but he's also got this string of women on the side. And over the years, the poor guy, he starts driving sports cars and wearing gold chains around his neck. So it's really disgusting and kind of obvious. But to be able to, instead of performing some sort of sexual Dr. Frankenstein work, where I have this woman in my life for her mind, and this woman in my life because she's so funny, and this woman in my life because she's really got big tits, and this woman in my life because she really likes to do horribly nasty things that nobody else will ever do with me. It's like, yeah, he's really missing something. Instead of building a truly intimate relationship, he is building this rather complicated Frankenstein monster. and it's really, it's not spiritually growthful. It's monstrous, actually. So I'm not trying to scold or disapprove as much as point out, beyond a certain point, do monsters dwell? And we would do ourselves a big favor by having these conversations with our significant other, no matter how scary they may be. And again, in terms of news you can use, things, takeaways from these kinds of talks, I think the first step is realizing it all has to start with conversation. We have to find our words, and it doesn't have to be a big long conversation. It can be just a moment or two, and then to build upon that. But I think if we're not willing to do that, for human beings, I think language is such an important part of who we are and how we make things work. And it would go so much faster if we could use language. But I don't recommend couples start talking about sex. I recommend couples, first of all, start with an intermediate step, what I would call a meta conversation, conversation about a conversation.
All right.
You know, would it be okay with you if, like, say, when they're dating, would it be okay with you if sometime we talked about our sexuality? And the other person's reaction kind of tells you a lot. You know, if he or she looks at the other and says, well, I just really don't think that would be appropriate.
Yeah.
Well, we have a lot of heavy lifting ahead of us. And I would take that as a big red light saying, no, do not get married this month. You really need to get a little bit farther, because how are we supposed to have a great sexual union with another human being if we can't even talk about what makes for a great sexual union, and talk about the things that are really working or not working for somebody in terms of their experience so far. And I think too many millions of Americans are still doing that, you know, getting married, even having sex. We know it's going to be okay because we've had sex for years, and it's always been okay. And then somebody gets married to the other, and everything changes. Well, because marriage, again, back to the Madonna-Whore Complex, well, that was different then. We weren't married.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I mean,
and it's common, right?
But it's common that I just don't.
Yeah, like that dirty joke. Like, what's that one food you can feed? Usually it's said to be a Jewish woman, but any woman, to make sure she never gives oral sex again the rest of her life. And the answer is wedding cake. Yeah. So the idea that it really does transform people's perceptions, because that was something we did when we were young and immature, or we were young and wild.
So getting married actually then makes people think that they have to be a specific way based on whatever ideas they have of what it means to be a husband and wife.
Yeah, our audience can't see me nodding my head, but that's exactly right. We have all these preconceptions, usually from the way we were reared, you know, and the beliefs we pick up from the ether, the very air itself around us, that, oh, this is decent, this is not decent, this is right, this is wrong. And that's the core beginnings of the Madonna-Whore Complex right there.
And when you're working with people who have this complex, do you like go over the communication and the way that they're looking before marriage, after marriage, or are you like pointing these things out to these people?
Depending when they, you know, at what stage of their own personal lives they come into my office, yes, of course I talk about it. And I usually encourage everybody, whether they're straight, gay, married, or single and engaged or thinking about it, to ask about that meta conversation in my office, because I think it makes it a more ceremonial sort of experience, where the one who really wants to talk about it more asks the more reluctant partner in front of me, and the other person has to gulp and really think about it and think, yes, I am open to talking about that. And then the follow-up questions are, so what kinds of things would be comfortable for you to talk about? What kinds of things would be uncomfortable for you to talk about? Do you have any hot button issues that would really make you uncomfortable? Have you ever had these conversations about sexuality before in your relationships? What worked for you then? What didn't work for you? So we're not even talking about sex so much as talking about sex. And not just sex, but of course the bigger world of sexuality, because it's not all about intercourse. Sometimes it's about a red dress.
Yeah. It's so strange to me how Yeah, this people get locked up like this, and I mean, I understand it. I mean, been in a relationship where, I mean, for like wanting to talk about this stuff and then not getting it reciprocated, or not the other person being resistant, but then staying in it because of the relationship. It's like that seems to be a common thing, and then
You mean where you stayed in it
yeah, you
because you
stay
were?
in it, and I think other people maybe they just stay in it because it's hard to, like, if you get married to somebody and then you you're having these issues with sex, or you don't want to have sex, and then you, I don't know.
Well, it is hard, and I think that's uh, indicia, as we say in court. It's indicia of the fact that sex is about a lot more than sex.
Hmm.
Sex is about the end of loneliness. Sexual relationship is emotionally affirming because somebody likes me enough to be married to me or living with me. Sex is about social status. And so, sexuality, much bigger idea than mere sex, we have a hard time saying no thank you to relationships that in therapy often work out like this. Someone will come to my office or be in a part of a, like, say, men's group,
Hmm.
and I'll ask the general group, so have you ever been in a relationship that was sexually unsatisfying? And usually there's a lot of laughter because everybody, they see how many
Yeah.
hands go up and it's everybody. And how did that happen? Well, you actually have to build that as much as you build the one that's happy and fulfilling. So,
It's true. Yeah.
so we built it and then had to figure out how did we. And usually it's a passive model, right?
Hmm.
We built it by not doing the things that needed to be done. It's
Hmm.
like building a really terrible house. We forgot to put in windows, or we didn't add the heating system till after it was built, or we forgot the wiring in one room or something.
Hmm.
And I think with, if I I know, see, it's so weird to even for me to even say this, knowing people are listening out there, but it's to think that marriage really is a sexual contract,
Hmm.
and it has been viewed that way for the vast majority of the history of formalized marriage. And to think, well, okay, what are the terms of that contract? Well, we all understand the language of to have and to hold till death do us part. Okay, we're supposed to stay together. And we're not supposed to be fooling around on the side in a typical monogamous
Hmm.
relationship. But in a polyamorous relationship, we're not supposed to be sneaking around. I mean, things are supposed to be honest and above board.
Hmm.
And so, whatever model people embrace, it requires some communication and also some frankness, some true honesty in terms of discussing. And it's not, I don't believe it's the conversation most people are equipped to have, say, in the first month or two of a relationship.
Hmm.
I think it takes either the help of a therapist or the help of a lot of years of experience in life where you've been kicked around a bit and you've learned some tough lessons for you to find your words and to
Yeah.
be able to say something like, "Oh, here's a typical conversation that never happens, but should." She or he wants to get married. The other person says, "Well, I'm interested. I'm really interested, but I think we should talk about something." "Oh, what's that?" "Well, when would we have sex?" "Oh, that's easy. Whenever we both want to."
Hmm.
"Well, that sounds pretty good, but I'm not sure that would work." "What do you mean?" "Well, because it sounds like we would each have veto power over the other person getting their sexual needs met in a relationship where we're supposed to be getting all of our sexual needs met with just this one person. So, like, say I wanted to have sex with you, darling, and you were mad at me because I forgot our anniversary last week, and you were still in punishment mode. Well, you wouldn't want me to have sex with you if I didn't want to. That would be rape. Well, of course. Of course, I wouldn't want that. But I would want to be with a partner who always wanted to take care of me. Well,
Hmm.
you didn't take care of me on my anniversary.
Yeah.
Well, and so you can see where
Hmm.
there would be conflicts about that. And I think if more of us understood, well, okay, so how is that sexual relationship supposed to work? If we really understood the terms that are not discussed, the implied terms, we would probably say, no, thank you. I mean, I like you, but I just don't think that's going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Although many of us kid ourselves and we say, well, yeah, I guess I could make that work. Where in another conversation, he says, so how often would you like to have sex? And she says, oh, I don't know, once or twice a week. And he says, yeah, I don't think I'm the right guy for you. Well, why? I like to have sex every day. Well, I guess I could do that. Well, when you hear somebody say, I guess I could do that, that doesn't sound exactly like enthusiastic, like what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And why would we settle for what we don't want in an elective relationship? It's like elective surgery. If you went to get a nose job and the doctor said, yeah, I can make your nose twice as big.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us would say, what else are you offering? Is that it? Well, I guess I could make it cute and adorable, but I don't do too many of those. Well, I think I'd look for another doctor.
Yeah.
Because that's just not going to work with, what I have in mind.
Yeah. What do you say about people who are saying that if they did have that conversation and it's like, before we get married, how often, say the guy says every day and she says, oh, I'm every day as well.
Right.
And then they get married and then
turns out she lied.
Yeah. Or do you think that number changes, or like through time, through different things happening, say they have kids, like can people's
number change?
Or is it fairly consistent, or what have you noticed with that?
For me, working with thousands of men over my career and maybe a couple hundred women, I would say in general, it holds steady across a lifetime, with the following caveats. If I'm with an abusive partner, yeah, that's really going to change my desire to have sex with them.
Yeah.
And if I'm with somebody I no longer find attractive, let's say he or she started putting on weight and gained 100 pounds or 200 pounds, I may no longer find that person attractive. And then again, Madonna-Whore thinking, we get into this business thinking, well, yeah, but that's not very spiritual. I should love him or her just as they are. That's just carnal thinking. That's not the important thing. Love is the important thing. But that's not really very self-accepting of the complexity of what it means to be a human sexual creature. We would never expect someone to fall in love and stay in love merely because someone has a nice personality, but has slowly morphed into a hideous monster. So somewhere between where we are and that hideous monster, there's some kind of a line that we cross. I don't know where that line would be. I mean, for people who have really rigid mindsets or rigid tastes, it's, oh, if she gained more than 10 pounds, forget it, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Or if he isn't earning above $100,000 by the time we've been married 3 years, he's not the right guy for me. I'm divorcing him. But, if we can expand our capacity to love, as I think most humans desire to do, we can change, and intimacy is what makes that possible. If, as my partner ages, for example, I've been together with my wife for going on 30 years, and I know, conceptually and cognitively, I can count up the years, and I'm quite confident she has aged. But because intimacy being what it is, every day I'm with her, I'm enjoying her, I'm loving her, and with sex thrown in, I think it's commonly accepted that orgasm is our most powerful reinforcer for human behavior. So I'm having sex with her, I'm loving her, I'm having great laughs, we're enjoying each other. And at the end of her nearly doubling her age, I don't see any aging, and it helps me to understand how it is that visual artists can paint their wife and she looks the same at 30 as she does at 50, as she does at 80, because he's just still so in love with this inner person, and her outer sleeve of her body, it's still just lovely to him. Now, if you told a 18-year-old, oh, someday you're going to be like really digging that 80-year-old woman, most 18-year-olds couldn't even begin to comprehend that, right? But in a healthy relationship, I think that's the norm, not the exception.
Yeah, and that's the thing then. It's so if you're applying, so everyone's kind of can be could have the Madonna-Whore Complex happen to them, probably in any
I think
relationship.
we're in our society, I would guess across the world, we're
Mm.
almost all infected with this disease to
Yeah.
some degree.
But then to do it, it sounds like, or to, if you're looking to get out of that or not be of whatever, held prisoner by it, you have to do that inner work of intimacy, which requires communication and conversations about sex, and accepting people as individuals. Just pretty much everything that you're doing, it seems like, or what we're trying to do, is in a way to not to keep the stuff at bay that wants to kind of destroy the relationship.
Well, it's funny because I have a secret fear. I don't know if I've shared in this podcast yet, but I don't want to make sex so safe to talk about that it becomes boring.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to talk about sex and all of its beautiful complexity and make it so confusing that it feels like, oh, forget it. Nobody, it's too hard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to be able to graduate from sexual high school, much less get a PhD in sex. I don't think it's so complicated. It's really more about just being aware of my own humanity and what it is I want,
mm-hmm.
and what it is I want in my future. So I think if you surveyed 100 Americans or even 1,000 Americans, you would get near universal endorsement of the idea. Well, yeah, I want to have a safe relationship where I can be free to be myself. I mean, that's pretty much a universal desire. And where the wheels fall off the bus is so how would you build that?
Mm.
And that's the hard part that we're talking about. And that's the part where, although I would say real quickly to anybody that the Madonna-Whore Complex has no part in that healthy relationship, I would also add being on a journey of spiritual development where I go from being stuck in a Madonna-Whore way of thinking to being free of that would be an amazing journey to take with a lover, and to be building a relationship with a person like that. I think that would be very ennobling, and also very personally, I think it would be rather the highest spirituality, because it would be serving humanity.
And have you seen that happen with your clients, where that have had this, and then they do the meta conversations and do the exercises you run them through, and they listen to talking about your needs and all that sort of stuff that you teach, and then have you seen them make that evolution out into like leaving it behind and letting go of?
Yes, I have. And I don't think you have to be brilliant. I don't think you have, even this word communication scares me. As long as we're both speaking English, I think we could do this. No offense to my Spanish speaking audience. I mean, as long as we're speaking a common language, we can communicate about this. But I have another podcast called Sex Crime Central. And in that, there's an episode entitled The Tabasco Kid, about a young boy, really a very young boy, who was sexually abused by his adoptive mother, who rubbed Tabasco sauce over his genitals when she found him playing the game, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. And she really traumatized the boy he once was. But today he's in an absolutely amazing marriage. Mm-hmm. And he and his partner have talked about that at length. They've worked through traumas. They're both of two different religions, so they've had to come to an understanding and an acceptance of one another. And it's really quite beautiful what they have. Now, I say that, and for all I know, they're divorcing next year. Mm-hmm. But longevity is only one metric of a good relationship. And I think what the principle they use in Alcoholics Anonymous, where they say, I think that would serve us here, because they say this is a program of spiritual progress, not perfection. Mm-hmm. So as long as your current relationship is so much better than your last, you're making some progress. And even if it doesn't work out, and I've had the sad occasion of seeing clients I care about get divorced, but who then would say, even of their divorced marriage, they would say, I have to say, though, as painful as this was to break up, it was still the best relationship of my life, even with all of its flaws.
Mm.
And they have a sense of confidence that they can do even better the next time, because at the end of the day, as they say, it's all about skills.
Mm. And that's just because they learned from they're saying it's the best relationship of their lives because it gave them the skills to create one that's even better than that. Is that
because they learned skills that enabled them to get to that level of quality. And even though that failed and they've learned that that wasn't enough, it's still, they have confidence that they can learn those next lessons more comfortably because they've already learned so many. So if I learn everything there is to know about brain surgery, except that vital last 5%, I'm going to have bad outcomes, right?
Yeah.
But if I have a bad outcome, for whatever reason, the lack of skill, lack of knowledge on any task, I'm that much likelier to build on that base of knowledge I already have, which is, I think, what happens in science when we look at experiments. There's so much we learn that doesn't work. But collectively over time, our civilization becomes more and more advanced in terms of our knowledge base. And I think that's because we as individuals become more and more advanced if we just keep on it. Whether it's a skill like, nuclear physics and investigating the workings of the universe, or a skill like writing, we can just get better and better and better at it, especially if we're willing to subject ourselves to some loving criticism or some feedback that helps us to see, well, it really was better and it really was good, but is it really what you were aiming for? I mean, is it really everything that you were looking for? I would say now, for me, after some rather spectacular and very public failures, for the last 30 years, I've been pretty much walking on a cloud. But I wouldn't give up what I have today for what I had 30 years ago with my wife, because it's gotten sequentially better and better over the years. So it's a program of spiritual progress, not perfection. I don't see any end to it. If I live to be 1,000 years old, I don't think there's an end to it.
So there's a constant unfolding. It never gets boring or never gets stale as long as you're both in it. And
yeah, if it does get boring, it means you're boring. It means you're not really sharing what's really on your mind. And it doesn't mean I'm in my wife's pocket for 24/7, but that, we each have taken responsibility for developing a life worth living. And we have, as a consequence, each of us have a life worth sharing. And we share our lives. We have our friends. We share our sexuality. And, it's growing apace, and it feels very fulfilling. But the sex today, I think that's one of the ways in which we affair-proof our marriages, is that it takes some time. I'm not going to say good marriages take a lot of work. I think they take a lot of work before the marriage. But in the marriage, it's actually very pleasurable getting to know each other.
Yeah.
And if you are doing that in the right order, then I think it makes it difficult to have a satisfying affair, not because you don't like sex, but because you like it so much. And you've become a connoisseur. You want the really good stuff, the stuff that comes with intimacy, with a real sense of connection, that's incredibly playful, where you can both laugh and make jokes, and you're really in it together at the same level of equality. And I think that makes it really hard to have a one-night stand with somebody who, if they heard you say the same things you say to your partner, they'd run out of the hotel room screaming, calling the cops or something. So I think that's what's going on for us. And it's a shame that we don't have more of this, because I think sexuality and spirituality are really, pardon the expression, great bedmates. They go together like hand in glove. And instead, in generally, we tend to think, now again, religion has helped us with this, but it's not responsible all on its own. But we tend to think, because of a lack of conversations, as if sexuality is somehow less than spirituality, when no, it's really like a part and parcel, one of the other.
Yeah.
And I think that origin goes back to how people talk about masturbation. Oh, that's right. People don't talk about masturbation. I think kids are left to themselves to not talk about masturbation. If they most of them, if they have any kind of talk, it's excruciatingly shaming or just flat out uncomfortable, like in that sitcom from Britain, Sex Education. I think there's just a lot of, it's very difficult to just relax and be comfortable with your own sexual development. And if you can't be comfortable within your own body, how can you ever be comfortable trusting somebody else to be comfortable with your body?
Yeah.
So I think that's what's going on. When we think about spirituality, I think it's impossible to talk about real spirituality without love. And I think love is the glue that binds our species together when we are on our game, when we're at our best. And sexuality brings up the challenge of the question, well, can you love me now? Can you love me in a red dress? Can you love me even if I want to do this? Can you love me if I think this joke is funny? Can you love me even if I think, even though I love you and I'm married to you, can you love me even if I think that lady at the grocery store was super hot? Yeah. Which would be kind of normal. Or in my wife's case, if she thinks George Clooney is super hot, is that threatening? Is that wrong? Is that evil? And I would say no. I mean, that's a part of the beauty and the wonder of being human.
Great. So it's about loving the individual and letting that individual be who they are and being safe to be who you are.
Right. And if I can't feel comfortable with that, that isn't really about the other person, is it? It's about me and my limited capacity to truly love people as they are. And I would be best protected by trying not to get to know anybody. Because even if, let's say I have a hard time because of the Madonna-Whore Complex with this woman, all women are going to have all these different parts to their identity. And my male friends are also going to have these disturbingly sexual thoughts and feelings. And for a lot of other people, that becomes a male-female thing. Well, guys are like that. I expect that from the guys, as in a former president who talked about locker room talk as if that was all of us guys, we talk like that. No, we don't. We really don't talk like that. Some guys do. And hopefully they will spiritually evolve.
Great. That's a great way to end on that. Cool. So that was great. I really appreciate the conversation, and it was interesting to get your take on that. So
my pleasure.
I would definitely want to talk more about spirituality and sexuality in like a full episode. So that will be coming up eventually. So we'll get into that.
That would be, I think, very illuminating.
Yeah.
And what are we going to be talking about next? In our next
maybe that
podcast. Ooh, okay.
I really want to get into the whole God's playground idea. I think that's could be really expanded upon.
Yeah, and I'll just say right now, that ain't just for people who believe in God, because I don't believe in God, but I think that it's just a label for the spiritual nature of that venue.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
All right. See y'all later.